In this video, I'll be sharing with you a requested tutorial on how to cut this stylish built-up neckline wrap blazer. And this dress is from Stitches by IC on Instagram. So if this is something you like, kindly hit on the subscribe button. So to start, here is my pattern paper. Marked out my measurement, which includes my shoulder to bust, under bust, waistline, and my blouse length. So I added extra 8 inches for my 8.5 inches for my blazer length. You can use 7 to 10 inches because it is after the hip point. So I'll mark the shoulder divided by 2 plus half inch because this dress has a sleeve, and I'll come down by 1 inch. I'll mark a basic neckline of 3 inches and I'll go ahead to connect. After I'm done connecting, the next step is to find my chest line, and to find my chest line is the bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. I'll draw out a straight line there. Now after I'm done marking at this point, I'll go ahead to place my tape and I'll mark back my shoulder divided by 2 and add half inch. Now connect this all the way to the upper part. I'll divide my armhole into 2 equal parts, come out by half inch. Now I'll go ahead to mark the bust circumference divided by 4 at the bust. Now after marking this, I'm going to connect this all the way up, and then from that point I'm going to connect it to the bust circumference divided by 4. The next step is to go ahead to mark your dart for this pattern. But before marking that, I'll mark out a basic neckline of 3 by 3 inches, which will serve as a guide for this pattern. So after I'm done marking this, the next step I'll take is to mark my darts. I'll mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, and I'll mark this all the way to the blouse length. After I'm done marking, I'm going to place my ruler and I'm going to connect this all the way down. The next step is to add my dart intake. Because this is a princess that I'll mark half inch here, 1.5. If you're plus size, you're going to use 1 inch here and 2 inches on the other side, or if your bust is fuller, right? Now go ahead to place your ruler and you're going to connect on both sides of your pattern. After you're done connecting, connect from the bust to the under bust and also connect at the other side of this pattern. You want to get the midpoint of your armhole and you're going to connect it to this point towards the bust. Now after marking that, take a dart intake of half inch on both sides and go ahead to blend this out into the initial dart line going towards the bust area. After you're done marking this, you want to go ahead to outline your pattern. After you're done outlining, this half inch on both sides of your pattern, take it all the way out and reconnect it. The next step you're going to take is to insert your body measurement. You're going to mark your bust circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake you have here, replace it and add your sewing allowance. Here, mark your waist circumference divided by 4, the dart intake, replace and add your sewing allowance. Now I'll move over to the waistline, mark the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. After marking this, I'll go ahead to mark the hip circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace and add my sewing allowance. The next step is to go ahead to connect. So I'll connect from the under bust to the bust, down to the waist and to the hip point or blouse length of this dress. Now I'll mark my bust dart. To get your bust dart is the difference between your shoulder to waist in front and your shoulder to waist at the back. And I'll go ahead to draw out a straight line, a slanted line connecting to the nipple point. Now after marking this, the lower part, we have like an exaggerated hip, so I'm adding extra 1 inch to it and I'll reconnect it this way, creating like a curve to have that exaggerated hip towards the lower part of this blazer dress, and I'll go ahead to connect. Now after connecting, now I'll go ahead to draft out all these measurements at the other side. If you have a tracing wheel, you're just going to go ahead to trace it out. So I have a tracing wheel, I'll just trace it out and remark it at the other side. Notice I added extra pattern paper to the upper part. So the reason why I did this is because this is a built-up neckline dress. So what I'll do is I'll mark 1.5 inches from there and I'll reconnect, then mark 1.5 and blend it towards this neckline, right? So after I'm done marking at this point, I'll start drawing out the neckline here, which is slightly curved, and I'll be extending it to the other part of this pattern. Now when I cut out this part, I'll have to make it up with another pattern paper. So this is like the wrap blazer effect that is towards the other side, and then I will slant it down. So after marking this side, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline it to make it more visible for you to see. So now let's go ahead to work on the other side of this pattern. I'll come up by 1.5 again, connect, mark this 1.5 to connect towards this side. So for the built up neckline, I'm using 1.5 inches for the height, then I'll slant it towards this side. So you notice there's no way I can connect to the other side. So when I cut out my pattern, I'll have to make up that side with another pattern paper. So I'll just go ahead and cut this out first. So I'm just going to go ahead to trace this out, and if you have any question, please kindly go ahead to ask. So I'll just go ahead to trace here, and remember that you have to like open it up to cut out some parts of your pattern, but this side that has a princess dart, cut it out together so that you have the same princess dart effect there. So I'll cut out the neckline area, the dart I have here, and then go ahead to trace here out, right? So after tracing here out, this is what I have for this side. Now I'll make up this side that I cut out, right? So what I'll do is I'll add additional pattern paper to it and make it up for the other pattern. I'll just add my little glue, my top bond on it to hold this part of the pattern down together. So what I will now do is I'll bring this other side to serve as a guide, and I'll now trace it out. This, if you're using this method, probably you don't want to like waste a lot of pattern paper, that is drafting out two sides and then recutting. So this is what I have after I'm done drafting at this side. So let's go ahead to work on the back pattern. For the back pattern, I've marked out all the basic measurements. I marked the shoulder to bust, shoulder to waistline for the back, and added the extra 8.5 inches I used for mine. So just like I said, you can use extra 7 to 10 inches. So this is the built up neckline I have on top, which is about 1.5 inches. So next thing I'll do is to start marking my dart. I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. Now after I'm done marking this, I'm going to connect it all the way up and take this to the lower part. The next step is to insert my dart. I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of this pattern. I'll be using a basic pattern for this, right? If you want to make it a princess dart, divide the mid point of your armhole, like divide your armhole into 2 and reconnect, right? So I marked ½ inch on both sides of my waistline, which I connected. Here I'll mark the bust circumference divided by 4 and add my sewing allowance. Mark the waist circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake, replace, and then add my sewing allowance. Here I'm going to add my hip circumference divided by 4, then add the 1 inch for my sewing allowance. Then I'll just go ahead to connect from the waistline all the way to the lower part of this pattern. While cutting this, I forgot to add like the extra hip for the back pattern, but please, when you're drafting yours, please make sure you add the extra hip, and I'll just go ahead to cut this out. So after cutting it out, I'll now go ahead to work on the upper part of my pattern before I will now cut this out. I'll come in by 1.5, extend the neckline by 1.5 inches and reconnect again. Then draw out a little neckline for the back because this is a built up neckline. Then I will now go ahead to cut out the rest of the pattern. So after drafting out, this is what I have for the back pattern.